Hi, my name is Jackie Lang, and I'm a staff research associate at the UC Davis Department of Veterinary Medicine and Epidemiology. Now, everyone has seen those iconic images floating around on the internet of plastic pollution, like garbage bags in the stomach of a whale carcass or a straw stuck up a sea turtle's nose. Well, my research focuses on discovering ways to detect tiny fragments of plastic pollution, called microplastics, in the environment. In this day and age, we all have a very close relationship with plastic. Just today, I woke up wearing my polyester pajamas, I brushed my teeth using a plastic toothbrush, and I poured myself a bowl of cereal that came packaged in plastic. And I'm sure that if you thought about it, you could think about 10 different plastic products that you've interacted with just today. For the past year, our lab has been looking at what happens to these plastic products once they enter the environment. However, we spend less time looking at large pieces of plastic pollution and focus our time trying to figure out how to detect teeny tiny particles of plastic that might be so small that they're invisible to the naked eye. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about the basic science behind microplastics. We're going to talk about how my lab is helping to make it easier to detect microplastics. And finally, we'll talk about ways that you can help reduce microplastic pollution. So what exactly are microplastics? Well, microplastics are defined as any piece of plastic that's between 1 micrometer and 5 millimeters in size. So for some context, 1 micrometer is about 100 times smaller than the diameter of a human hair, and 5 millimeters is about the size of a pencil eraser. So where do these microplastics come from? Well, a lot of microplastics are directly manufactured in the form of beads that go into personal care products like toothpaste and facial scrubs. And when we use these products, those microplastic beads get washed down the drain. Another source of microplastics comes in the form of fibers. They come from synthetic fibers like fleece, polyester, and acrylic, and are released into the wastewater stream when we do our laundry. And some, but not all, of these microplastic beads and fibers get removed during the wastewater treatment process before being released into the environment. Another way that microplastics are created is actually from larger pieces of plastic that break down into tiny pieces. So imagine a water bottle that's made its way out into the ocean. For a while, it's going to float on the surface and be exposed to sunlight, and that sunlight is going to make the plastic extra brittle. So when the waves start coming in and the water bottle gets tossed around, it's going to break down into smaller and smaller pieces over time. And eventually, our one plastic bottle can turn into millions of teeny tiny microscopic pieces of plastic. And these tiny pieces of plastic take thousands of years to degrade, which means that over time, the amount of plastic in the environment is continuously increasing. And this poses a risk to aquatic life, such as crabs, fish, and birds who might mistake microplastics for food. Microplastics are especially likely to be eaten or inhaled by animals at the bottom of the food chain, like oysters, mussels, and clams. And when this happens, the microplastics can become embedded in their tissues. And in fact, microplastics have been found in commercial fish, shellfish, sea salt, bottled water, honey, and even beer. So, microplastic research is still an emerging field because most of the research has been done on larger pieces of plastic. And researchers are still working on standardizing methods to detect microplastics in water, sediment, and inside of animals like fish and birds. Microplastic researchers also don't have standardized methods for analyzing microplastic size, shape, or type of plastic. Since research methods aren't yet standardized, it makes it difficult to compare different studies. So once they become standardized, it will allow for global comparison of studies, which is the first step to figuring out how microplastics are distributed, what their impact is on wildlife, and their ultimate fate in the environment. So our research aims to figure out best practices for analyzing microplastics once they've been removed from the water, soil, or animal tissues. We're especially interested in figuring out what types of plastic are present. So our goal is to help contribute towards coming up with standard methods of analysis for microplastic researchers all over the world to use. To do this, we use an analytical method called Raman spectroscopy, which uses a microscope that focuses a laser onto a microplastic particle. When the light from that laser bounces off of the particle, the energy level of the light can be detected by the microscope. And when these energy levels are plotted on a graph, the resulting graph acts like a chemical fingerprint and can tell you exactly what type of plastic you're looking at. So we're trying to figure out what are the best lasers to use for all of the major types of plastic that you find in the environment. We're also looking into how shape and size of the plastic particle affects our analysis. So microplastics are found in the environment all over the planet because of society's love for cheap plastic products. Scientists have still barely scratched the surface on figuring out how to detect microplastic pollution and the impact of microplastics on plants and animals. Researchers from my lab and labs around the world are working tirelessly to understand how microplastics behave in our environment. But how can you help? Well, reducing your overall consumption of plastic products, especially synthetic clothing and single-use plastics, is the best way that people anywhere can help with the plastic problem. Reusing and recycling plastic products can also help minimize your plastic footprint. For ideas on how to reduce your plastic footprint, check out the World Wildlife Fund's website for 10 tips to reduce your plastic footprint. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Thanks for your attention.